Hi, my name is Senna Vasquez, and my action research is about reducing stress and anxiety. I teach chemistry at John F. Kennedy High School in Sacramento. You make my face here a little smaller so you can see my screen. All right. So today I'm going to discuss my research question, how it aligns with the pedagogical framework for SAC-MASTL, give you a bit of background about my school and learners, my literature review, my research methods, the results that I found, and my next steps. My research question is, how do specific strategies, tools, and policies affect learners' stress and anxiety? This aligns with the SAC-MASTL pedagogical framework because if my strategies, tools, and policies were effective in theory, there should be an increase in science content knowledge. Secondly, my strategies, tools, and policies were intended to establish a safe and positive class culture, as well as provide equitable opportunities for learning. I teach at John F. Kennedy High School. This is a large comprehensive high school, and it was established in 1967. This was my first year at this high school. My previous entire career had been spent at a small high school, also in Sacramento. But when I moved over and I read the mission statement at Kennedy High School, what stood out to me is that it said JFK is committed to a safe and caring environment. And that helped me develop my action research revolving around stress and anxiety. Now, Kennedy High School kiddos, about 2,200 of them, and they look just like any other of the large comprehensive high schools in Sacramento. Now, my action research is in my chemistry classes. I have 5 periods, 155 learners, a little bit more boys than girls. I have about 75% sophomores. The rest are mostly juniors, sprinkling of seniors. And 144 reported having a smartphone. And that was important because if I was going to use some technology to improve their access, I needed to make sure that they had some device to access the things that I was giving them. So my research question, specific strategies, tools, and policies. This is what I'm going to focus on. But first, why did I do this? It was because of stress and anxiety in kids. And as far as literature review and or documentary, I watched a documentary. I actually had it come to the small school that I was at before called The Race to Nowhere. And it really pointed out how young people are so stressed and filled with anxiety that unfortunately it can often lead to suicide. And this is really just something that I think all educators have in the back of their mind as a worry. On Your Mark and Grading Smarter, Not Harder was part of our book study, and it helped me wrap my head around this whole idea of grades and that it's something that we do to kids, and it causes them a huge amount of stress and anxiety. Balance with Blended Learning is a book that I further explored, looking at standards-based grading, reflective practices, and further exploring this idea of a different type of grading system to honor growth and actual standards learned, not necessarily behaviors in a classroom. And then there's Buddha in Your Backpack, and I'd like to read a quote from Buddha in Your Backpack. It says, teenage life, like other parts of life, but even more so, is really hard. You have to be a daughter, a son, a sister, a brother, a grandchild, an extended family member, a goof off, a hormonally deranged adolescent, a student, a citizen, a worker, a future leader, a part of the ecosystem, a psycho-spiritual being, a human person. You have to be all that. It takes some doing. Being a teenager is an astonishing amount of work. There are some people that helped me develop my action research question. Laura inspired me with her action research last year about the flipped classroom. And I got this idea from my daughter, Alexandra Davis, how important it is to take the lectures that I do and make them available to students who are absent or for students who would like to listen to them 2 or 3 times, maybe someone who doesn't take notes as quickly as I'm going. It just improve the access for them to listen to my lectures more often. Min helped me understand getting an iPad and mimicking it with my MacBook and how to do a YouTube channel. So these people really helped me to develop the action research question. And then my daughter also talked about things like, being equitable doesn't mean ignoring technology. In fact, it means using the technology that they have and have access to, which is why looking at 144 of my kiddos had a smartphone on that given day that I asked them, maybe I need to meet them where they're at and it's on their phone. So anyway, the takeaways are adolescence is a time of change. Which causes stress and anxiety in itself. School contributes greatly, especially with grades. When they're absent, how do they deal with that? What if they have different learning styles? What about the pace of learning, if it's too fast or too slow? And then, of course, this idea of equity and meeting a child where they're at and having access, what be it on their phone, their textbook, Google Classroom. We noticed a lot about access during distance learning, and some inequities really shined through during that time. And so I think that this is a very important topic. So, stress and anxiety is an issue with ages 12 to 17. As you can see, it spikes both depression and anxiety. It does lower a little bit after age 17, and this goes to further prove that it is an issue. The National Institute of Mental Health paints an even grimmer picture. About 30% of kids ages 13 to 18 suffer from anxiety disorders. Now, because of these books, documentaries, the research that I've done, the people I've talked to, it really led me to want to find ways to improve access. I wanted to be more equitable, and in hope, by doing so, to reduce stress and anxiety. And what I further hope that would do is to increase their learning. So first, I'd like to focus on some of the strategies that I tried. And strategy number one was goal setting using the SMART method. So setting a goal is one thing: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely. But then how do you keep that goal? So it's setting that SMART goal, monitoring your progress, arranging your world, recruiting support, and treating yourself. So I shared these methods with my kids. And second semester, every single Friday, we would revisit goals that they set. And we did this from January through March. Their three goals: one was a long-term one for chem, and they could just copy that down every week. It was to keep it fresh in their head. But I asked them to set a short-term, right, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and timely goal for chemistry. Maybe it's around homework. Maybe it was around turning in labs, or maybe it was about their collaboration. And then I asked them to set one more goal about their personal life. So this could be getting more sleep, reading more books, changing their diet or exercise. When I asked the kids how they did after the first 5 weeks of our SMART goal setting practice, they said that, let's see, we've got about 67%, 2/3 or so, reported that they felt successful at achieving their goals. In your opinion, is the practice of weekly goal setting helping you be more successful? And about, 67, 68%, actually, no, that's even higher. Sorry, about 75%, 3/4 of the class said that it was helping them feel more successful. Learners said about the SMART process, it has kept the level of stress over achieving certain goals lower. But I've also had to prioritize other things and set aside my personal short-term goal. I thought that was important, that they were learning how to prioritize. Another learner said SMART goals help to not stress over school and grades. And then further, someone said it helps to not stress as much and make more time for myself to get more sleep. Oh, these poor kiddos are so sleep deprived. So I really felt like this was a win, and that this strategy that I tried was helpful at reducing their stress and making them feel more successful. A second strategy I tried was tea time. And one of the students says she lets us eat and have tea. And so I bought a hot and cold water heater. I had disposable water cups in case they just wanted some cold water. But I also have mugs that I've collected throughout the years from everywhere I've traveled. And my lab assistants would wash them. That way kids didn't have to waste class time doing dishes, but my lab assistants could. And then I brought in a lot of different options for tea. Some kids even brought in tea from their own house to share with all of their other classmates. And my rule about tea time was have a cup of tea anytime you need to. If it's a lab day, then no tea that day. And kids really enjoyed this and they thanked me and they said often it was something that they look forward to each day. And I mean, shoot, a cup of tea always reduces my stress. So I thought it might be helpful for them and they really seemed to enjoy that. And it built a sense of community. The conversations around the water coolers were fun. So, some tools that I tried to reduce stress and anxiety as well. I created my own YouTube channel. And on this YouTube channel that I'll show you right now, I would record in real time my lectures that I did on my iPad. And I would make a YouTube video. And so you see that towards the end of distance learning, it was a little bit less, but right at the beginning of distance learning, it was quite a bit. And if you look at the beginning of the school year, um, there was quite a bit more people using that, but this wasn't about the numbers per se. Like right here, only 4 people ever watched this particular video, but maybe that's because those 4 people were absent and they needed to look at it. Here, 43 people looked at this video, and that's when it was kind of new, and they were like, what is this thing? So, anyways, I thought that was a valuable thing to do and try. I also have a daily agenda, and on my daily agenda, it has links to um, any simulations may have done, any worksheets that they were given, quizzes were taken on here. And this was really invaluable for anyone who was absent. They could always go and look at that day and they could find out what they did. I also have a homework agenda like this that is similar so that way kids always could look at what their homework was each day. I used Google Classroom throughout the school year, which was really great once distance learning went into play because they were already prepped and understood how to use it. And I used Remind and, of course, email. When I asked kids which materials they have used, you can see that many of them used Google Classroom, the agenda, the homework agenda. About half of them used the YouTube video. And then right down here, social media sites. I encourage kids to make their own social media sites and share knowledge with each other, have a platform to ask each other questions. Now, I wasn't going to sanction it, but I know kids are going to do this anyway. And so the fact that I acknowledged it, I think a lot of kids were willing to join it and use that as another means of access for them. When I asked them if they had taken advantage of the YouTube videos, we had, let's see, yes, a few times is red and the blue many times. So it's pretty good, about 60%, 60+%. And when they did watch it, people either strongly agreed or agreed. I had more falling in this area, so that was a win for me. So, what policies did I put into play to reduce stress and anxiety? So, the quiz method, first attempt, second attempt, this is a thing I did for my action research actually a couple of years ago. All quizzes are worth 20 points. So, I take their best score of the two quizzes and I add any growth points. So, let's say they got a 10 out of 20 the first time, and then they got a 14 out of 20 the second time. You see they grew by 4 points. So what I enter is that 14 plus 4 growth points. They actually get an 18 out of 20 in the grade book. And so, yeah, they don't have an A in all the content, but they got an A because they grew and they learned. I always would go over these quizzes almost immediately or within 1 to 2 days. And the quizzes were always the same format, the same content, just different chemicals and different numbers. When I asked kids about focusing on mistakes and if this was a good way to learn, a lot of them strongly agreed or agreed. And they said, I may have put off studying because of pride, but after taking the quiz, I realize and I learn from my mistakes. Another one said, by taking the test again, it makes me feel more confident and smarter and learning by my mistakes. When I asked them about the first and second attempt quiz and how it helped them to take control over their learning, again, strongly agree or agree. This is like 93% of kids felt this way. And they said, I can learn what I don't know without stressing about getting a bad grade. That was key for me. They use that word stress, right? And it lets students learn and improve on mistakes. And I also really like the learn and improve that this particular learner said in their feedback. A few learners said it is a great move as a teacher. Supporting your students helps us feel heard, especially if something goes wrong. Knowing that your teacher wants you to succeed and helps you to do so is something you don't see a lot. I think it's a good way to give students a second chance. You can't always be in the best place mentally, emotionally, etc. I think that was huge right there, on any given day and take a test or quiz. So it's nice to be able to try again. It's also an effective way to understand mistakes and is generous to students who aren't good on quizzes, which is something none of the teachers I've had before have done. And so this generosity isn't about just like handing out points, but it's handing out points for growth, especially when kids struggle. Many of them have test anxiety, quiz anxiety, and that's a real thing. My second policy that I tried was around late work. Basically, no points are deducted for late work ever. Late work is turned in a reasonable time. But what's reasonable? Well, that's decided on the learner and me. And what kids said is she, Miss Vasquez, is understanding of people's schedules. This is the first year I have ever had to deal with athletes. Some of these kids aren't getting home till 11 o'clock at night. And yeah, take a day, take the weekend if you need to. And I liked that they said she trusts that we do our homework and make sure that we understand what she teaches. And so I feel like this really encompassed what was important about the late work policy is trust. When I analyzed the usage of my late work policy, there were 56 assignments first semester, 158 learners that semester. 91% of all my learners turned in at least one late assignment. There were only 15 that never ever used it. So this graph right here is showing, and of those 15, let me point out something. 6 were the type of students that never turned anything in, let alone turn it in late. So really there were only 9 timely students, 100% timely all semester, 9 out of 158. So, we're all late in learning. Learning does not happen equally at the same pace. But this is interesting, the number of times. So 70 learners used the late work policy 1 to 4 times. Like they didn't take advantage of it. And as you can see all the way down here, there were 9 learners that used it 13 or more times. Of those 9 kiddos, some of them were IEP students. I had another one with a major health issue, another one who changed homes. So yeah, I mean, they're going to be late. Life is happening to them. When I asked Mrs. Vasquez's late work policy, they said, I thought this was important, these 4 bars right here that are high over on the right-hand side, they said it lowers my anxiety. 64% said helps me stay balanced. 67% said it's fair. And 75% said it helps me not give up. There were a small amount, 3 students, in fact, said it's unfair to those who do their work on time, and I honor what they have to say, but again, it was only 3 kids. Or if it's too lenient, we had 7 kids that said that. 16% said it makes me procrastinate. So that is a negative of just taking late work forever, but I think that the positives definitely outweigh the negatives of this policy. And one learner said, I feel that most of the class is responsible and doesn't take advantage of what we are given. And I think you can see that in this graph right here, that it's not like people were taking advantage of turning stuff in late all the time. Most people only used it anywhere from 1 to 4 times. So learners' thoughts on stress. They said you are not learning much if you are stressed because you're distracted by stress. Another one said with more stress, people's brains will have a hard time thinking by all the stress. And then another kid said, Miss Vasquez is very chill to the class and it makes me feel more willing to learn. I'm assuming more chill means that I'm like lowering their stress and anxiety. So in conclusion, my research question again, how do specific strategies, tools, and policies affect learners' stress and anxiety? This class stresses me out. Kids over here said they strongly disagreed with that, or they disagreed with that. So I was happy to see that about 60% of kids said that my class did not stress them out. When I asked about the stress in chemistry, 55% said it was a bad thing. Now, this ties back to, while 55% think stress is a bad thing, you have to realize that what Buddha in the backpack said. It is hard to be a teenager. This is the most difficult time of their life, and it is a lot of work. Often, these kids, this is the first time in their life they've ever had this level of stress. So, of course, many of them think that it's bad. And so, I was pleased to see that while 40% still were stressed out by my class, 60% said that it didn't stress them out. And so, I think that understanding how new this is to many of them and how difficult a place in their life adolescence is, I feel like this data right here really speaks to me about their stress and how maybe effective I was at decreasing it. So, my next steps, I am going to continue doing these strategies, tools, and policies. I think it improved learning, but really, most importantly, I think it helped me build relationships and it developed a sense of community within our classroom. Next year's question isn't going to be so much about this, but I got very interested in this idea of grading, and I would really like to explore mastery based and standards based grading. I did a little bit of piloting with that during distance learning, and I'm hooked, and I cannot wait to explore that topic deeper next year with my action research. So, thank you all for listening to my passion.